Day 851 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzie here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. So we'll take a look at those Russian losses, as currently Russia sits on more than 535,000 military personnel losses, representing an additional 1,300 in the past day. Then as for hardware losses, 12 tanks, 15 APVs, and a whopping 51 artillery. Then we'll head across to the map and start out in Crimea, as Ukrainian forces have dealt a significant blow to Russia's communication and surveillance capabilities in occupied Crimea, with the NIP-16 space tracking and communication center in Vitino, near Yevpatoria, going up in flames last night after a barrage of MGM-140 ATACMS tactical ballistic missiles found their mark, with the impact being a huge operational loss for Russians in their effort to maintain communications and supremacy of the skies above Ukraine. Plus, there was also unconfirmed reports of additional strikes on military units and air defense systems in the area, and if true, would continue to point to Ukraine's broader strategy of neutralizing Russian air defenses to pave the way for deployment of F-16 jets. And so Ukraine's military intelligence chief, Bordanov, emphasized the strategic importance of isolating Crimea from Russian supply lines, highlighting ATACMS missiles as crucial for this objective. He also stressed the need to push Russian naval forces completely out of the Black Sea and reclaim occupied territories to end the ongoing conflict. Bordanov also predicted challenging conditions for at least another month, but dismissed fears of an Armageddon scenario as he touted Ukraine's advancements in combat technologies and its growing resilience to negotiate on the battlefield where necessary. Then briefly moving up the map to Rostov in Russia, as the Russian resistance group Atesh conducted another sabotage operation in Rostov, targeting a relay cabinet on the Rostov-Mariupol railway line. Now, this such event marks the third railway infrastructure attacked that's attributed to Russian resistance movements within the month of June alone. Then headed into the Ukrainian map today, we'll move across to the Donbas, into the Avdiivka axis, as there were marginal advances being made by Russian forces on the outskirts of Sokil and Novoalexandrivka, and in particular for the entrance to Sokil, where we see a number of destroyed pieces of Russian hardware, including at least a couple of BTR-80s, so those are the APCs, armored personnel carriers, and possibly another 2 or 3 BMP-1 infantry fighting vehicles. Although, as you can see, it's very hard to get an ID on these things right now. And on the topic of this exact region, video filmed by Russians of a trip along the Russian supply road headed to the front puts on display the seemingly endless destruction of the hostile wasteland, with piles of destruction of Russian BMPs, Buhanka minivans, trucks, and even motorbikes. I even noticed a stolen red carpet, but also seeing the world's second army scooting around on a 50cc moped. And on the trip, we also saw a 80s styled red two-door coupe with Russian soldiers inside, and was probably forcibly stolen from a local in the Donbas, which is something that will inevitably turn into scrap metal as well, and not exactly fit for purpose. All as the Ukrainian army continues to focus on its attention on any and all logistical platforms of the Russian army, including this Barbie doll looking car full of Russian soldiers. How the mighty have fallen. Then looking around in the east, we saw the destruction of a Russian multiple launch rocket system, the BM-21 Grad. Then we saw a strike by a M30 DPICM GIMLARS cluster rocket, aka a HIMARS rocket with cluster submunitions for a wider area of effect, striking on Russian military positions. Then headed to the news with a slightly more condensed video today, and starting off with some hardware news, with somewhat of a unique entry into this list, as Ukraine received a test article of the Hawkeye mobile howitzer system from weapons company AM General, who is known for developing and presenting innovations in artillery systems, including the soft recoil technology, which reduces the weight and recoil of artillery systems, allowing for greater mobility and effectiveness on the battlefield. Now, as for this prototype-like Hawkeye mobile howitzer test platform, it combines a Humvee with the firepower of a 105mm cannon that gives it additional mobility and a range of about 15 kilometers, all equipped with a digital fire control system to ensure accurate targeting and efficient fire missions. If they prove useful, then we would expect for Ukraine to be receiving in a lot more. Then, as for a little bit of a Russian hardware update, as Russia is pulling out some more of their oldest equipment again, this time it's a stockpile batch of the 2S1 self-propelled 122mm howitzers. And I get somewhat specific here, stating the 2S1 designation of the platform because the 2S indicates a self-propelled gun, as opposed to, say, a towed artillery piece. And the 1 refers to the first in the series of these Soviet SPGs. And given that most Ukrainian SPG platforms, by contrast, are 155mm systems with a range of anywhere between 30 and 42 kilometers typically, whereas these Russian Soviet 2S1 SPGs are lucky to reach half of the lower end of that range, at about 15 kilometers. So they've got their work cut out for them. It's going to be a short life for these ones. Then into some more news. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky announced that Ukraine expects to begin formal negotiations for European Union membership on June 25. He characterized the upcoming event as truly historic, signaling a significant step forward in Ukraine's aspirations to join the EU. So this development represents a major milestone in Ukraine's European integration efforts and its geopolitical realignment following Russia's invasion. Moreover, this move is expected to bolster Ukraine's international standing and support, fostering stronger political and economic ties with EU member states. And the progress in EU ascension also serves as a powerful symbol of resilience and determination for the Ukrainian people amid ongoing conflicts within their country. Then in some more news, South Korea's National Security Department chief has issued a clear warning that if Russia transfers modern military technology to North Korea, then South Korea will lift its self-imposed restrictions on weapon supplies to Ukraine. And you may or may not think that that sounds like a big deal, but if the Hermit Kingdom, that is North Korea, is able to get a technological boost from Russia in exchange for artillery shells, it then becomes a national security issue for South Korea. So this stance reflects Seoul's strategic response to potential shifts in the regional military balance. Now, here's the thing with South Korea. They've been slowly preparing for any potential unwanted land-based conflict with North Korea for the better part of 80 years. So the sheer stockpiles of ammunition and other supplies that they have might seem nearly unfathomable. And some say North Korea has about 20 million artillery shells, for instance, so South Korea would certainly have a fair amount to compete with. Then headed across to a very brief lighter segment, as we recently saw a large Ukrainian hexacopter UAV perform an evacuation of its brother due to a previous shootdown by Russian soldiers with small arms. No drone left behind. Then headed across to a quick funny to round it all off for today, guys, and this one seems like a bit of a classic in a way. So the Russian babushkas are back, this time angry at German Chancellor Scholz, with them saying, "Scholz, you are off your game. We have our own locally made light non-alcoholic beer made from Bavaria malt." Then they attempt to promote the hell out of the drink, followed by remembering how angry they are with Chancellor Scholz, by placing his ripped up images in a bucket and then proceeding to burn them. Now, naturally, this relates to sanctions placed on Russia and the unexpected need for self-reliance within their own economy. But hey, if they're so happy with their new non-alcoholic beverages, then there's no reason to get angry at Chancellor Scholz. But there's actually something much more sinister going on here, as these babushkas are added every 6 months as they are dubbed Putin's squad, which is just one of the many ways Putin tries to promote some of his messages abroad. So, ironically, it's in the Kremlin's messaging that we do in fact see how much they are hurting. Because when the cameras are cut, these babushkas will be immediately lining up for their promised 2 bags of potatoes each. Russia needs a brand new public relations team, if anyone's up for that sort of stress. So thanks for watching, guys, as we continue to expose the deep dark Kremlin underbelly of Russian happenings in the context of the largest European war since World War II. So thanks again, and I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers!